Shalom, friends. Tonight I'd like to spend some time discussing with you qualities of leadership and with a special emphasis on what makes authentic Jewish leadership. Of course, like everything we have, when we try to find understanding and insight, we turn to our Holy Torah and we look in the Torah to find lessons and inspiration that speak to us. In the book of Exodus, we are introduced to the first leader of Israel. In the book of Genesis, we are introduced to saints, to parents, to very valorous and brave people. We have a Noah, we have an Abraham, we have a Sarah, we have a Joseph. But we don't have the leader. When we introduce to Moshe, Moses, our teacher, we are being introduced to a model of leadership. So let's examine the Chumash. We read about how Moshe grows up in the palace of Pharaoh, and then one day goes outside and he sees how an Egyptian is beating an innocent Hebrew. And he looks and here and there, and he intercedes for that innocent man. And he actually risks his own life, and Moshe kills this oppressor. Let's stop, examine, and think for a moment. What did Moshe put on the line over here? The answer is everything. He was growing up in an Egyptian palace. So not only his prestige and honor, his profession, but his very standing, his very being, he put on the line for justice. And here we have a mark of what makes a leader. A leader is someone that stands up to injustice, doesn't cluck, doesn't go tis, doesn't empathize, sympathize, doesn't moralize. He takes action. That is an authentic aspect of Jewish leadership. The next story we are taught about, he goes out and he sees two Hebrews. Over here, there's no more Egyptian versus Hebrew. Here we have two of his own brothers, and one is acting unjustly. One is acting unkind. And indeed, Moshe is indignant, and he says, "Wicked man, why are you doing this?" Now, if you saw two people arguing, would you interfere? You wouldn't, unless they were perhaps your children. Or perhaps if you had a vision. If you expected better, you might interfere. Because your vision is so real to you. And seeing these two people is not only destroying your vision, it's a travesty. You could be so much better. How could you allow yourself to be debased and hit your fellow man? Well, Moshe's bravery and heroism is seen as a threat to Pharaoh, and he has to run away from Egypt. So he runs to a place of Midian. And you would think now Moshe, as a refugee, would try to keep a low profile. And yet what do we find? Moshe comes to a well, and when he sees innocent women being abused by shepherds, again he intercedes. A stranger has no backing, no legal backing, has no friends. And yet, when he sees something which is wrong, he stands up for it. So let's just stop and quickly enumerate. What we're looking for in leadership is someone that's going to take action. Someone that's going to have a sense of justice. Someone that has a clear vision of what people should do and how people should act. And if they do not act according to that vision, he doesn't take a back seat and give up. Instead, he's proactive and it gets involved in changing the situation. Believe me, those are such rare and admirable qualities. Anyone that we would meet, I would say, let's follow such a person. Is there anything more that a leader has to exhibit before you become a Moses? And surprisingly, there is. The next story is that Moses becomes a shepherd. And the Midrash points out an amazing statement that God is going to test Moses to see if he's worthy of leadership, and the test is going to involve how he will take care of sheep. One of the telling stories of the Midrash is as follows. Moshe would take out the sheep, find for them a meadow, protect them from wild animals, and one day he notices that one of the sheep is missing. And Moshe is upset. Why would a sheep wander away? So he starts looking for the sheep, and he finds that the sheep had not wandered away. The sheep was thirsty and actually had gone back to find some water. When Moshe saw the sheep that was drinking, he spoke, he expressed. He wasn't angry, and he said to the sheep, "Little did I know you were thirsty." It was almost as if he was berating himself for not being aware of this particular sheep's need. And beautifully, the Medrash concludes, Moshe carries back the sheep to the flock. You say to yourself, hey, we just read about a man who's brave, who's courageous, who stands up for justice. God has to test him with sheep? And I believe one of the most important lessons over here is the following. Ask yourself a question. Why was Moshe concerned about that individual sheep? And why is it when he found the sheep, he didn't get angry at the sheep, instead he berated himself for not having known that it was thirsty? What the Midrash is hinting to us, in my opinion, is as follows. That God said, you are a man of justice and you have great leadership qualities. Will you be sensitive to the individual? Or will you just be looking at the cloud, the general populace? You have this vision for your people. Will you lose touch with the individual and the particular? Will you concentrate only on the whole and forget that the whole is comprised of individuals? Moshe rose to the occasion. He took care of the flock. And then he noticed in the flock there was a need of one sheep. And rather than feeling resentful, he catered to that need. And you ask yourself, hold it. Did he have a right to leave all of the flock to look for the individual sheep? And perhaps this too was a lesson. Moshe understood that the flock could never truly be protected by a shepherd without each individual sheep being catered to. That is what clinched it. That is the hallmark of a Jewish leader. Not only a person who's wise, and a person who has vision, and a person who could communicate, and a person who could inspire, and a person who could explain, but a person who is able to lead the group and never lose sight of how a group is comprised of individuals and each one needs to be taken care of personally and individually without losing sight of the whole. That's a very incredible feat. Very few Jewish leaders could actually exemplify that on a national level. But we, in the 20th and 21st century, were very fortunate. Because our leader, the Lubavitcher Rebbe, Rabbi Menachem Mendel Schneerson, the Lubavitcher Rebbe, in 67 years of his inspired leadership, not only saw Israel for what it could be, not only had a vision globally, but every individual counted. And each person, it wasn't one size fit all. Every person was brought closer to God by using the means that would touch his particular soul. My friends, having such a leader becomes a challenge to us. The Rebbe, it has been said, did not make followers as much as create new leaders. Our job is to be brave, to have a vision, to be communicative, but most important, to understand that we truly need one another and how we could truly help one another. And by increasing in these individual particular acts of oneness, we actually create and strengthen the greater whole, the big one. Let's hope and pray that we merit the coming of Mashiach speedily in our days, when one nation will serve one God in one holy land, and there will be a pure language for all of mankind. Amen.